gee, I hope wasn't a problem and other
No,
people were
no, you guys are a-okay. You're perfectly organized.
good to hear. So far, so good. Yeah. How many do we have, Sohana?
We have got a total of 13 people, but I do think that's including us as well.
Yes, it would be. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll give everyone maybe till 7:05. What do you think? Just,
Yeah, sounds good with me.
oh. Hi, everyone. I know lots of you don't have your cameras on. Hopefully that's just because you are camera shy and don't want to be recorded, but I always love seeing people's faces. So I always encourage people to turn their cameras on, but of course, no pressure. No one has to. Okay, we'll just give it a pitch more, and then I think we'll get started. For those who are here, don't want to just leave you sitting there waiting in silence. What do you think, Sohana?
I think we're ready to get going.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, amazing. So, hello to everyone. Thank you for everyone for being here, taking your time to be here. My name is Sohana, and I'm the program assistant at Low Entropy. And I'm very new to Low Entropy at the moment, so just bear with me with everything going on. But I've got Adrienne with me by my side, so I think we're gonna have a very good time today. We're gonna do our Ask Me Anything, um, and we're gonna focus on conflict resolution again with Adrienne. So before we start and before I pass it off to Adrienne, I'm going to read a land acknowledgement for everyone and then we will get started. So let me just put it up here. All right. All right. So I would like to begin by acknowledging that we're meeting from many ancestral territories. I acknowledge that I am an uninvited guest calling in from the traditional and unceded lands of the Coast Salish nations of Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish. I thank the First Nations communities, past, present, and future, for their stewardship, care, and leadership on these lands that we meet on. I give thanks to the ancestors, leaders, and matriarchs for looking after the rich resources and cultural teachings of this beautiful land. Let those of us who are uninvited guests commit to being better guests than those who came before us and go forward in respect and reconciliation. All right, so pass it off to Adrienne, who will take it forward. And yeah, I hope everyone enjoys.
Hey, well, welcome everybody. Thank you, Sohana, for starting us off and for that lovely acknowledgement. And thank you, everybody who's here, for taking time taken some information around a topic that I consider to be really valuable. I have been immersed in this topic for probably about 30 years. It started by default, really. I had been working within the training and development department within a financial institution I was in. I was delivering management workshops, leadership, communication, different stuff, and loved it. And that job came to an end. They, as organizations always are doing, finding that certain things need to change. So I went back into the system as a leader, and I took over a very challenging department. It was a large department, and it was a new position that was created. So the individual who had been managing the department now reported to me. And I soon learned that I was brought in to correct what was an incredibly toxic environment. And I soon learned that I didn't have the skills to do that. It was a really challenging situation, being brought in to a department where someone who had been responsible for running that whole department was now reporting to someone else. And that individual was the cause of the toxicity. They were very strong, had strong bullying characteristics. It was a very oppressive environment. And I honestly didn't know how to fix it. I was actually intimidated by the person who was running the department before me. I was intimidated by them because I did not have good conflict resolution skills. So off I trotted to a conflict resolution course through the Justice Institute of BC and became absolutely hooked. The programs were amazing, and I learned and grew myself personally a ton. And then the bonus was also that I was able to start integrating those skills into managing that department. And I feel very happy in being able to say that within a year, that department absolutely turned around. And it was probably, we got awards for our teamwork, our productivity, our customer service. It was such a cool department and just was thriving with people working together and supporting one another. And so I just continued with that program until I had my certification. And that was just the beginning of my development in different areas of working with individuals to help them, support them really to, I guess the best way for me to put, if I was to try and encapsulate, which I'm always trying to do because I feel like there's so many different things that I'm involved in, is that I support people to get deeper clarity on who they truly are as an individual, and then support them to learn how to express that in this world in ways that are respectful, are encouraging of others to do the same, and because I really believe that we're all here to be unique and to be different. Why wouldn't we be unique and different, right? And we struggle so much with expressing that. And we struggle with expressing it effectively. So kind of the work I do, I've done lots of stuff over the years. I'm not going to go into all of it by any means. But I now teach part-time for Vancouver Community College in two of their leadership programs. I teach leadership skills, coaching, which I'm certified in as well, conflict resolution, culture in the workplace, and other stuff that I teach for them. I also now, for the last 6 years, I haven't worked for an organization other than Vancouver Community College. I have my own business. I'm a coach, I'm a teacher, I deliver my own workshops, and that's me. So let's get on with this. What I'm going to do today is I have a short PowerPoint presentation because I thought it would really be helpful for us to do an overview. I'll touch on some components of conflict resolution that are significant. It's not in depth or detail. This isn't a workshop that you have signed up for. And then we're going to take questions. A number of you sent questions in, so that's cool. We're going to start there with the ones that were sent in to Low Entropy. And then we will engage in any other questions that come up additionally to that may not be covered either in my presentation or in the questions that were forwarded. And we have an end time of 8:30. It would be, we'll stick with 8:30 unless we become very engaged and we're in the middle of some topics, then we're happy to continue until we can, finalize whatever that topic is, with a hard end of 9 o'clock. So that's what it's going to look like. Hey, let's take a look at what I got here as a presentation. Sorry, you know what I need to do? I need to back up and get myself to the beginning. There we go. I'm going to start that way in. So here we are. Oh, trying to get rid of this guy. Get him out of my way. Conflict resolution. This is the Low Entropy Foundation and the Women Rising program that Low Entropy is very highly engaged in right now. And there's some really cool sessions and presentations that they're pulling together with some really amazing people that are providing support to Low Entropy through that. So if you aren't connected in following Low Entropy to see what is being offered, I'd suggest you do, because you might find some really interesting things that you would benefit from. I've been connected with Low Entropy for a number of years, but through another organization called Youth Empowering Youth. And so that's where my connection originally began. What's conflict? So if you really think about this, like, what is conflict? If you had to try and explain the word conflict to someone who didn't have a grasp of the English language and they had no idea what that word conflict meant, how would you describe what conflict is? Because disagreeing doesn't necessarily always result in conflict. Having different viewpoints doesn't necessarily always result in conflict. So conflict, what is it? Well, I pulled some definitions up. Conflict, it's friction or opposition resulting from actual or perceived differences or incompatibilities. Conflict may have negative as well as positive characteristics. We'll talk about some of those positive ones. A conflict is when two or more parties have real or perceived differences that are or seem to be competing or opposing. You can see that there's been the word perceived used a couple of times here. And another definition is a dispute. It's when a struggle becomes competitive and reaches a critical point, which then starts to negatively impact the process and or that relationship. That's a good definition of conflict. As most of us think of conflict, we think of it as something that is negative, that is negatively impacting that relationship with a group of people or another person, and eventually causes potentially breakdowns, challenges. That's usually what we think of when we think of conflict. And so I always like to throw something like this in there because this is a quote from Teddy Roosevelt, one of the former US presidents. The most important single ingredient in the formula of success is knowing how to get along with people. There have been tons of books written about what are the components of learning how to get along with people. And there's a reason that there are, is because it matters. It matters to your joy in life. It matters to your success in life. It matters regarding the opportunities that will come your way. It matters in, well, we'll go into what some of the impacts of unresolved conflict are. And I've worked in organizations in capacities that have ended up being very connected with conflict. At one point, I was an employee relations consultant, and that's really all I dealt with, was the impact of either individuals' inability to effectively maneuver through challenging conversations, people who approached conflict, but approached it in an unskilled way, and it did cause more damage. I think one of the things that I learned the most, and I don't have statistics and I don't have percentages, was that almost every issue that came to me, it stemmed from poor communication skills in a variety of ways, but the inability to communicate effectively with each other. And it goes off the rails. In the workplace, the impact of unresolved conflict is huge. I've only touched on a few things, but it's loss of productivity. It's poor problem solving. It's unsuccessful projects. The loss of shared intellect, as well as the tapping into employees' highest potential. When I came into that role that I came into, that I told you about in the beginning of this presentation, where I just realized I needed to get some conflict resolution training, the individuals working in that department, the potential that they had to be successful, to be creative, to be productive, to work as a team was so suppressed. I mean, people don't rise to their highest level when there's toxicity, when there's feelings of resentment, when there's fear, when there's a lack of trust. It just doesn't happen. A loss of revenue, poor attendance, employees quitting, stress-related leaves, lack of creativity, lost time, lost resources, lost customers, unproductive teams. Those are just some of the impacts of unresolved conflict, or poorly, well, unresolved, poorly addressed, unaddressed. And then personal relationships. I mean, there's unresolved resentments that so many people carry with them. They just really don't know how to deal with expressing them and communicating them in a way that they feel is going to result in something constructive. A lot of times we don't deal with things because we're legitimately afraid to deal with them. We don't feel confident in having skills that we can draw on, and that the result of us approaching that conflict has the potential of being successful. The fear of it being worse is pretty intimidating. Hurt feelings, which are unnecessary or unresolved arguments, overreactions, and inappropriate action taken based on assumptions and misunderstandings, loss of trust, lack of joy, lack of understanding each other, a loss of really valuable time because we stay stuck in these mindsets and in distancing ourselves, families breaking apart, marriages breaking down, and divorce. Like, it's huge. So, are there some really good reasons to start to gain a better understanding of what conflict is and ways to start to approach it that could result in more productive outcomes? Yeah, it's a lot of reasons. What we believe about conflict comes from the messages we receive from our own background and experiences. So I'm just going to explain something quickly here. But as I keep saying, this isn't a conflict resolution workshop, but it's important to understand that the day we're born, we come into this world absolutely dependent on our caregivers to survive. And so we learn really fast what we need to do in order to please others, for us to feel comfortable, for us to feel safe. So if there's times when we go to complain or approach or ask questions or get our needs met and we don't get a good response, we very quickly figure out, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? What do I need to do? So we grow up learning to adapt ourselves to please others. We all do it. And it comes from that basic need. So that we learn how to act and interact with others. And we also learn through the modeling around us. So if the people around us dealt with conflict really effectively, which not many people do, then awesome. We had that modeled. We saw how they spoke. We saw how they acted. We saw the results. We learned skills. Very few of us had that opportunity. So what we did learn from were our models. Myself, my parents didn't have conflict. For some valid reasons, once I got older and learned why, but it wasn't productive. So I just didn't think conflict was something that you ever wanted to entertain. Because their approach to it was, if you do, it's only going to make things worse. People are going to say things that they're going to regret. So we're not going there. And so by the time I brought myself up into the adult world and I'm now interacting with other people, I'm like, I don't have a clue how to deal with conflict. And it was a problem. So my belief about conflict was, you don't go there. Because if you do, it's only going to get worse. Things are going to escalate. Things are going to be said you can't take back. And now what? And so once I did start to deal with some conflict, because, in reality, there's other people out there in this world that you interact with who don't have a problem expressing themselves. I would keep it in and keep it in and keep it in until I couldn't. And then I would explode. And then sure enough, I'd say things out of being overreactive, out of context. And yeah, it got worse. It just reinforced my belief about conflict. Why do it? Don't go there. But of course, that doesn't work. So what has to happen is we need to start. I learned what my beliefs were about conflict when I started immersing myself in conflict resolution training. And I went, clearly what I grew up believing isn't effective. So unless we start to shift our belief about conflict, we will stay in that cycle. Because we stay in what we know. We stay in what we're comfortable in. That's human nature. And so our response is what we do when a conflict occurs, and our response is usually based on what we believe about conflict, and what we do in a conflict will lead to a positive or a negative consequence. The consequences of a response will make our beliefs about conflict even stronger, and this means our cycle of conflict will probably stay the same. I had to learn new skills. And when I started to incorporate those skills, I started to get different results. And when I started to get different results, I decided that maybe my belief in conflict wasn't accurate. And I kept practicing those skills and I kept getting even better results. And I changed my cycle. And there's some really cool things that happen when you can do that. Your relationships open up. You develop trust with one another. You really get to know each other. We'll talk about how you do that. So I'm not crazy. My reality is just different than yours. This is from Alice in Wonderland, which I love. There are so many cool things in that book. But this is so true. My reality is just different than yours. So how do you find out what someone's reality is? Step towards constructive conflict resolution. Do your own work. The most important relationship you will ever have is with yourself. It's the foundation for all others. If you've got a lot of conflict, your own conflict going on internally, you're going to bring that into your relationships. We overreact, we get defensive, we get hurt at times when we don't necessarily need to. I'm not saying that there aren't people out there who act in ways that are hurtful, but I'm saying if we haven't started to really get grounded ourselves and sort some of our own shit out, we're going to bring that in to our relationships. And so really, if you ask yourself, how can I expect to be really good at dealing with conflict with another person if I have conflict going on within myself that I haven't learned how to deal with effectively? To appreciate myself, to really try and understand who I am, what matters to me, love myself for that, feel grounded in that. Because then we're not as reactionary to others. But every step of everything I do, when I coach individuals, when I teach workshops, it's about you getting clarity on you. How can you learn how to be assertive and express yourself openly and honestly if you haven't really gotten clear on who that is? You need to identify the issue. So steps towards constructive conflict resolution, identify the issue, define the problem to be resolved. That's not always as easy as you think because we get very, very positional. My position is you just need to help clean the house more. That's the issue. Or that other person's issue might be something, you need to quit bossing me around and telling me when and what to do. Very different positions. What is the real problem? You don't know until you start to really get down to it and listen to one another. Because the real problem might be, I'm not feeling respected. That's a very different issue than someone not cleaning up after themselves. So you really need to identify the issue, define the problem, understand the other's perspective, let them empty their bucket. Now, this is probably one of the hardest things for most human beings to do. To listen, to just listen and continue to listen and ask some questions and continue to listen and ask more questions and continue to listen until that other person has emptied their bucket. And then it's time to ensure understanding of your perspective. But often your perspective starts to shift when you start to really understand that other person and where they where their intentions were, what's really going on for them, what matters, what do they care about, what's not being met for them. And then that individual is so much more open on the whole to listen to you. And then the ability to start coming up with solutions is going to be way more constructive after that above work has been done. So what are some of the skills you use in conflict resolution? Self-reflection. You've got to learn how to be very honest about yourself, and you need to do what I said in step 1 of the last PowerPoint, which is do your own work. Self-reflection is important. And then another skill is hesitation. And I refer to that as the gap. And that's taken out of a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, which to me is a Bible of relationship building. And he has something he introduced in that book called the gap. And what the gap is it's that moment in time from when an event has taken place external to you. Someone has said something, someone has done something. The gap is that period of time before you react. And what you do with that period of time is a gift. Listening. If you learn no other skill, but the skill of actively listening, you will have a significant difference in your ability to resolve conflicts and your ability to develop strong, trusting relationships. But listening isn't just hearing. Listening is actually an active skill. It's attending, nodding, focused, not being distracted. Body language shows you're engaged. Attending to that person, paraphrasing things that they've said, asking really good open questions, summarizing information that you've said. So if I understand you right, this is what I'm hearing is really important to you. It's important for you to, okay, well, tell me more. Okay, well, I'd really like to understand that more. Could you describe what you mean? Could you give me an example? That's listening. That's allowing someone to empty their bucket. And then learning assertive communication skills. Assertive communication skills is about respect for yourself and others. It's about expressing yourself clearly, concisely, specifically, and with confidence. Knowing what matters to you, what your boundaries are, what you need to share, what you need to express, and being able to do it with respect in a clear, direct, concise, confident manner. Those are assertive communication skills. And they're a big part of conflict resolution. Creative problem solving. That takes an open mind. It takes brainstorming. It takes thinking outside the box. It takes considering a different perspective. You need to have respect for others. You need to have empathy for others and yourself. Respect for yourself, empathy for yourself. You need to have an open mind. Humbleness. If you've screwed up, if you were disrespectful, if you were unfair, if you did something that contributed to how this other person is reacting, own up to it. You're absolutely right. That wasn't fair of me to say that. You're absolutely right. I exaggerated. You don't do that all the time. You're right. That was hurtful, what I just said. And I'm sorry. Honesty with self and others. So listening. Most people do, this is another Stephen Covey. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. What am I going to say? Oh, I don't like what they're telling me. Oh, I'm starting to get defenses. Well, they're making it sound like it's my fault. Well, no, you're thinking all of these things. You're not listening. So there is a Simon Sinek video, The Art of Listening, how listening helps us embrace other perspectives. It's really cool. Actually, so Hannah, would you be able to put that link in the chat? That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I can do that for you.
Great. And then there's another link, if you wouldn't mind putting that in. This is a documentary. It's called White Right, Meeting the Enemy. This is a documentary by a woman by the name of Dia Khan, who's a Muslim woman in the UK, and she was trolled by white supremacists. And she did a documentary where she came to the US and met with them. And it's a very interesting documentary, and it is about listening. It is about listening under probably some of the most difficult circumstances anyone could. And she listens, and she lets them empty their bucket. It's pretty cool. So those are two things did you get both of those? Did I give you a chance to get them, Sohana? Great, thank you.
Yeah, I've got them there in the chat for everyone.
Thanks. So yeah, listening to understand why is my there we go. Okay, so we don't need to look at that for now. I'll pop that up later. That's just me. That's just me. My contact information. I'm going to stop sharing right now. So I just wanted to do that quick. Trust me, that's quick. Just touch a little on conflict resolution and what some of those components are and why it's important and why I immerse myself in this topic and teach it. And I take different chunks of this topic and I do workshops on different chunks. Assertiveness skills, I do workshops just on assertiveness skills, on listening skills. So yeah. Okay, what we're going to do is some people had sent questions in when they registered. And so I've got those questions, which I'm going to touch on. And then Sohana has a couple of additional ones that were sent in that I don't have recorded here. And then by all means, we're just going to open it up to everybody who's here. If there is something that isn't asked, that after everything I've gone over and then the questions that we have, then yeah, for sure. You're welcome to ask anything you want. So one of the first questions that had been sent in was conflict repair. And if anyone is here who sent the question in that I'm addressing, and you want to add anything to that, then that's cool. But conflict repair, I guess the question is, how do you go about repairing the impact of conflict that hasn't been dealt with effectively? Is the person here who sent that question in? Okay, well, what I'll do is if you unmute, if someone is here and wants to add details to that, if I take that as meaning that, so I've had a conflict with someone and it doesn't feel good. It didn't go well. It doesn't feel good. And I'd like to try and repair that. First of all, it depends on the relationship. So, I mean, almost all of these questions, there's lots of, it depends on if. It's one of the things I have definitely learned is every situation has its own unique components. So I'm going to do this in a general way, but conflict repair, if it really matters, I would say one of the first things that someone would want to do is approach that other individual or parties and let them know how much it matters. Let them know how much it matters. It obviously does matter, or you wouldn't be wanting to look at repairing it. And so coming from the heart and being sincere, it doesn't feel good to me. And I would really like an opportunity to understand better where you're coming from, what happened, my role in it. Because this relationship is important. How does that sound to you? Would you be willing to do that? That's one of the things, if I'm just looking at this from a general perspective. What can take place a lot of times in that process is, and again, I'm going to use myself, relatably to this question, since I don't have real specifics. Depending on how that conflict had the result of it, I would probably have to do some self-reflection. How do I really feel? Am I still holding resentment? What's my intention in wanting to repair this? What does repair look like to me? Does repair look like getting to a point where we really understand each other more deeply and we're able to move beyond and move past? What does repair look like? Is my intention in saying that really altruistic? Is my intention to really still just prove them wrong? And how what they did wasn't okay, and how much it hurt me, and just to make sure that I get my point across that I feel maybe I hadn't. So it's really about, you need to take a look at yourself, as always. Why do I want to repair this? And what was my role in it? And am I willing to be open and honest with myself and with the other person? And am I really willing to hear and try and understand them? But that's probably one of the best ways is to approach that individual and say, this matters to me. I don't like how it feels. I miss you in my life. I miss working with you. I'd like to have a stronger relationship than we've had in the past. I'd like to be able to disagree on things and not have it result in this. And I don't know exactly how to go about that, but I'd really like to try. Those kinds of things. Connect with someone who you feel maybe has some skill in this area, who could help you talk it out, who could give you some suggestions. So that's how I would answer that question based on what I know from the question. Number 2, techniques for conflict resolution. I've gone over a few. I mean, there's lots. There's some very specific general techniques. As I said, I did go over some of those. So I don't know if someone's here who asked that question and if there was a specific type of situation that they were looking for some techniques too. But, if you're really wanting to learn the skills and the steps, and then immerse yourself in some conflict resolution training. Because there's techniques, listening, open-minded, honesty, asking good questions. Number 3, how to have the difficult conversation about racism with white women. So I don't know if that person's here. I don't know what that difficult conversation is, what the intention of the conversation is. So is this a conflict that's happened possibly when whoever has submitted this approached having a conversation about racism with someone and it didn't go well, and they're wanting to try and approach it again in a more productive way, potentially. I'm not really sure what the question is asking. So yeah, I guess from my, what is the intention in having the conversation? Is the question that came to my mind when I read that. Because that would make a difference as to how you would approach it, is what the intention is. So and maybe this Simon Sinek, the video of him talking about the listening skills and allowing others to really just empty their bucket and just go deeper and deeper and understand, might be something that applies here. And same with the Dia Khan documentary might be. But yeah, not knowing just what that difficult conversation is specifically. So if that person's here, okay. Next question is, I think that what I most want to learn from the session is how to communicate respectfully the way that I'm feeling about a conflict in a way that considers the other person involved also. I want to be able to handle conflicts in a more mature way. Good for you, whoever you are. The way where I will be a better communicator and have a healthier and happier relationship with my friends and family. Yeah, that's what it's about. How to communicate respectfully.
Oh, just so you know, I think that was my question.
Is that Hallie?
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah. Do you want to expand on that a little?
Oh, yeah, I guess
I know you
sometimes.
did a good job of writing
Oh,
it out, but
thank you.
yeah.
Well, it wasn't really like a question format, but I was just trying to um but I think in the form it said like what are you hoping to learn or take from the session? And so that's kind of but sometimes I find it hard to communicate my feelings and stuff in a respectful way, like and or like I don't know, it's like I don't want to come across as aggressive because I feel like when I was younger that's what I used to do, but now I'm kind of really passive, so I don't really say anything. But I feel like it's important to say something because otherwise people are gonna walk all over you, and I don't want to be taken advantage of. And I'm starting to realize that if you don't say something, then it's no guarantee that someone's gonna know that something's bugging you. You gotta say something. Um, and just yes, but I want to say like the right thing, and I don't want to. The thing is, I want to say something that's not gonna be like. I want to be careful with my wording, if that makes sense. Like I don't want to offend someone, but at the same time, I want to get my feelings across in an appropriate way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, you've described that so well.
oh,
And
thank you.
yeah, and that's the ticket right there. Like, yeah, it's and it is what I teach, is especially with assertiveness skills. Assertiveness itself is an art in itself. And that's what one of the presentations I do is called The Art of Assertive Communication. Because that's what it's about. It's about respecting ourselves and respecting others and communicating in a way that expresses what matters to us, our boundaries, our thoughts, our opinions, while at the same time respecting others' right to do that as well, as long as it's done respectfully back. And so there's language. There's language that will just shift something that we want to express in a way that one of the things that's important is really watching that we're not using language that is saying you are this or you have done that. Is to take accountability for ourselves, for our own thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, and to be able to say, this is how I feel, or this is how I felt. when you, and then describe the behavior or the words that someone spoke. So it's not saying when you were rude or when you disrespected me, or it's I felt disrespected when you cut me off continually. And you can add things that soften it, like I understand that you really wanted to share what you had to share. But what happened for me was I felt disrespected because I was being cut off.
But I'm just writing this down. Um,
Well,
but
this is going to be recorded too,
oh, right.
right? Is being recorded.
I forgot
So
about that.
yeah. So that's the nice thing about it. And I believe everyone would have access to the recording, wouldn't they? How is it? Where's the recording
Thank
going to
you.
be? So Hannah, do you know?
Yeah, I believe it's going to be on our YouTube, but I'm pretty sure we'll send out an email with the link for everyone, so you'll get it at some point.
Awesome, because take a look at kind of where we're at. It's at 7:53. So when you get the recording, you can go, you can kind of speed forward and go, okay, that's the spot where, so that would help.
True. But what was you said, I understand you blank, but what happened for me?
Oh, what I was just as an example, I was saying, I understand that you really wanted to share what you had to say, or you were excited, or you had a lot, but what happened for me was when you cut me off, I didn't feel respected.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Or I didn't feel you were interested, or whatever applies there, right?
True.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But the main point of that is that it's so often we blame and we overreact because we're feeling hurt and we're feeling disrespected, or we're feeling angry, or we're feeling whatever we're feeling. And that's where that gap thing always comes into play, is like, okay, let's just chill a sec and then ask some questions even, I'm wondering why when I'm explaining what took place for me, you tend to cut me off before I'm finished, right? It's more, less accusatory, less blaming, more curiosity.
Oh, true.
Yeah. While at the same time, you are expressing that you have been cut off, right? And if
Yeah,
you and how it feels. I feel this, or I get the impression you're not interested. Those kinds of things, right? Does that help?
it does help a lot. Thank you very much. I feel like I try to, I feel like you can always learn something from these events and stuff, and I feel like I'm noticing a connection between everything, um, which I think is cool.
Awesome.
Anyways, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Was it
Okay.
Adrienne or Adrienne or
It's Adrienne.
Adrienne? Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll put my information up. Okay. Okay, so the next one was just simply conflict resolution. So there wasn't so much a question in that. Um, and then the next one after that was self-employment. So if someone's here who submitted that, could you expand on that for me? Because I'm not sure what was in your mind. Okay. We can always come back to that if someone is here and that's what they submitted, and you can explain it. Another one was manage conflicts. Okay, that's in a general way, that's what we've been talking about. And that's what this is a general presentation. It's not a course or a workshop. So again, manage conflicts, dealing with conflicts came in. Dealing with someone who always disagrees with us. And Why is that a problem? Anyone here who submitted that? Other than, you may not like being disagreed with, but I don't know the context that it's in. So I guess if it was something like, okay, let me throw something out there since nobody's giving me some specifics around dealing with someone who obviously disagrees with us. People have the right to disagree with us. Okay, so let's just get that out there. But say it's a situation where it's a work environment and you're trying to give someone instructions or you're explaining to someone what needs to take place and they're like always challenging, always disagreeing, always challenging. I guess maybe if I'm just to come up with something, I'd address it. It seems that when I give you instructions or I'm providing you with information that you would need in your role in order to do your job more effectively, you come back with a disagreement. And I'm curious as to what's going on for you. Curiosity, stay curious, try and understand. Now, this is all in the context of respectful. If you work with someone and they're just disrespectfully challenging you and disagreeing with you, then you deal with the fact that they're being disrespectful. So, yeah, not knowing the real specifics behind that one either. People can disagree. They don't have to agree. And if it's not a pleasant relationship, because if someone who's always controversial and is always just wanting to challenge you and is always just wanting to disagree and you're not enjoying it, then, But one of the things that's important is to realize that, like, within the context of conflict resolution, relationships that are important, and that could be work-related relationships, personal relationships, ones that you want to have as ongoing, that are important relationships in your life, it's important to consider the characteristics of that other person. Like, we're not here to change people that don't want to change. And that's sometimes what we can get caught up in is, well, you're just always this. And I don't like the fact that that person's always like that. And so I need them to change so that I can feel better and this relationship's easier. Well, that's kind of a losing battle unless you're with someone who's open and values the relationship and respects hearing what it is that you have to say and that you're struggling with. And that you've learned how to communicate that in an assertive, respectful way so that they can be more open and receptive to it. That's important. So you still need to learn your skills. Absolutely. You still need to do your work. You need to self-reflect. You need to become the best person you can be in a relationship. And then when you're with others who also want to make it work, then as you learn those skills and you're able to communicate more respectfully and effectively, they will respond. They will want to understand what's going on for you. But I don't think you can emphasize enough. It just doesn't work if you're trying to change who somebody is. And that's their primary characteristics. And you keep struggling to try and make them change so that the relationship's easier for you. It's a good chance it's not going to happen. You keep hitting your head against a brick wall. So those are the questions I had jotted down.
Do you want me to give you the ones that were
Yeah,
a little bit later?
the additional ones, yeah, that came in.
So one of them was how to build community with diverse people.
How to build community with diverse people. Where's the conflict in that one? I'm not. I mean, that's all communities are full of diverse people. So I would need, if someone is here who submitted that and could provide me with more clarity on what they mean by how to build a community with diverse people, that would be great. Because if it's because conflicts are rising within that community and you're wanting insight into how to deal with those conflicts. See, what often happens is, yeah, I mean, the world is full of diverse people. Everybody in this call right now, we're all diverse. I mean, that's the thing about the billions of people on this planet. None of us are the same. So we're all diverse. And I understand that there's more, there's extremities in our diversiveness. But it doesn't have to mean conflict. And so, yeah, I really need to understand the question. Because I mean, if I think about team building and things like that, and the importance of how to approach building a team, considering there's huge diversity, even just in how people go about solving problems or how they communicate. There's specific skills and concepts you apply to team building. So is someone here who submitted that, who could give me more insight? Okay, so Allison, you popped in it could be some fear about saying something disrespectful. I find curiosity and asking questions really leads to building community. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if that is where the comment was coming from, was about fear about saying something disrespectful. I know that can certainly can come into play. And I teach, I teach for Vancouver Community College, and one of the programs is they have a couple of health programs, and I teach interpersonal communication skills within those health programs. And huge diversity, huge, big variety of cultures in those courses and different language. And so, I think sometimes mistakes just happen, unintentionally. And maybe that's falls back to that someone had put it in that, how to repair conflict is if we really do respect the diversity and we really do care about how we impact others and we unconsciously or innocently do something, say something that wasn't intentional, and it has resulted in someone feeling disrespected or someone feeling hurt, or is to be open about it, is to want to understand. Again, I don't think I can emphasize listening and curiosity enough. There's a man by the name of Bill Ury, Ury, and he wrote a book called Getting Past No. And then he wrote a subsequent book called Getting to Yes. And this is a man who has been involved in very high profile peace negotiations worldwide. And one of the things he says is, we don't approach conflict often enough really wanting to understand the other people and the other party. We approach conflict wanting to say why we're right and why they're wrong. And that applies to everything. And so, if I think about that, being fearful of maybe doing or saying something, and you have and not meant to, I always think approaching it and talking about it in an upfront, honest way is important. It wasn't my intention. I'd really like to understand. Your relationship matters to me. So I'd love to get to know you better. Okay, what else?
I've got another one here for you. It says approaching individuals who will not discuss a conflict, how to engage them respectfully and get the conflict out in the open to be discussed.
Yeah, I don't know if that person is here. Again, oh, Allison.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, cool, okay.
Should I expand on that or?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I think I know myself fairly well. I've done a lot of work on myself and my vision and values and that sort of thing. So I think that's coming from a good place to start. And I think my communication skills, I'm working on my assertive communication, and I think I've gotten much better at that. But it's sometimes people don't want to engage in the conflict. And so they would rather just pretend it's not there. But it's, in my opinion, it's impeding the relationship, and it's impeding even communication, and it's impeding productivity, and it's a challenge to get them to address the conflict. So I'm just wondering, sometimes I think that I would just like to be very clear and just say something like, although it's unintended, I'm having a conflict with you. It could be about boundaries or values or their behavior, but they're reluctant to engage. So I'm putting myself out there. I'm trying to be respectful. I'm trying to be clear. I'm trying to address why I think the conflict is occurring. But their response is they're not prepared to take the conflict on for whatever reason. It could be fear. It could be their own skills in addressing conflict. It could be that they think I'm just in the wrong or imagining that the conflict is there. But sometimes the response is, I get something like, I'm the one being disrespectful. Because they're reluctant to engage in the conflict, they say something like, you keep bringing this up. You're harassing me. And I don't think I'm being harassing. I don't think my behavior is harassing. I'm just trying to broach the conflict.
Okay.
So what steps and guidance would you have for me?
Well, good question. I think the first thing that comes to my mind, and again, if you and I were working in a coaching thing where, we really went into specifics and details, and this is what they said, and so this, which we're not going to do, obviously, right here. I would say one of the really important components of wanting to engage someone is we need to be very descriptive as to what the behavior, how the behavior is impacting the relationship. So if it's a work relationship, if the dynamic taking place between the two of you has an impact on productivity, then what specifically is it impacting? If it's impacting their approach to things within the workplace. You need to get down to the actual behaviors and the impact that the behaviors are having. And so often what we do is we kind of talk in general terms. Well, this isn't working. I'm not saying this is what you're doing, but we'll say things like, well, this just isn't working. It doesn't feel good. We don't communicate. We don't talk much. That in itself isn't descriptive enough. We need to be able to say things like, when we didn't communicate regarding this particular thing, this was the result. And so I'd like to talk about how we can stop that from happening again. Okay, so you may have to get away from wanting to approach that there is a conflict between you and focus more on what's the impact of that conflict. Because if someone chooses to disengage with us, they have the right to disengage with us. If it's impacting our ability to do things that are required of us to do to the extent that to the level we need to, now that's what becomes the issue. And so you need to be able to describe exactly what the impact of them not wanting to engage has.
So, what I'm hearing from you is that I need to be very clear on the impacts and the behaviors so that I can specifically state that as, like, for example, contravening some kind of boundary or something, personal boundaries, or that, and then if they ultimately, if they choose not to engage in the conflict, that's their right. Unless it's something criminal or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And depending on the impact, right? So that's where I'm saying, like, without getting into real specifics, if someone, say it's at work, if someone I work with has been, in my opinion, disrespectful in how they're communicating to me, I would say to them that isn't okay. The way you spoke to me, when you said this, or you interrupted, or you did this, that's not okay. It's disrespectful, and it's not okay. And so going forward, it's not okay for you to talk to me that way. But that's just simply expressing your boundary. And if that person goes, well, you're just overly sensitive, I'm just letting you know it's not okay to speak to me that way. Like, to not even engage in that, to not defend that or anything else. I'm not overly sensitive. Anyone, but no, it doesn't matter. Just, they can say anything they want. Just say I'm just telling you, it's not okay to speak to me that way. Like, that's a boundary thing, right? If someone gets to work late on time and it puts a person behind and they can't meet their deadlines, and that's impact of behavior. And if that person says, I don't even, go get out of my face, I don't even want to talk to you. Well, you have the choice to not talk to me, but it's not okay that your behavior is impacting my ability to be productive. So I'm going to be speaking to whoever, right? Like, that's all boundary stuff. That's taking care of ourselves. So I don't know if that helps.
I think that I'm gonna do some more self-reflection, and then I may have to try again.
Sure.
I may have to say, you have the right to your opinion, and I'm trying to be respectful, but I do have a conflict with you, and this conflict is becoming obstructionist in my life. And would you be interested in speaking with me about this? Because I think it would be helpful to you, and it would be helpful to me, as opposed to not to just ending the communication. Because
Sure.
I don't find that saying that, like, if I just what you heard, Could you say that I'm harassing someone? I don't think so.
Not from what you said. No,
Yeah,
no.
yeah. I'm finding that very harsh. I'm finding that hearing that in trying to raise an issue, which I feel is about productivity, it's about relationships, it's about respect, it's about even just legitimate, rightful as opposed to criminal behavior. Because there is a long story attached to this, but I won't go into that right now.
Right, yeah.
It only does the other party, it only does, it's doing right by their own workplace scenario or their own personal life scenario, to engage in a healthy, respectful conversation. If at the end of the conversation that they cannot, there's no, if I've allowed them to unfill their bucket and that sort of thing, and we've tried to come up with some problem solving, and they just say to me, I don't see that there's a conflict here, then I at least we would have gone through the process together, like the process that you described when doing some conflict resolution steps, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm finding so difficult is there's just the they're not willing to engage.
Right, right.
So I think what I'll do, I don't want to take too much more of your time here, but I'll do some reflection, some soul searching on my own. But I think it's time to bring up the conflict again and to try and stay really in the place of non-judgment and really in respect, but being clear and being assertive and saying this is affecting it's affecting my ability to like, for example, search for work. It's affecting my ability in relationships. It's affecting my ability even in my day-to-day life, my
Right,
belief and health.
right, right.
So,
So
so
yeah, yeah. It sounds, yeah, like it sounds like you want to give it a try again, and that's cool. That's good. Yeah.
okay.
Thank you for sharing that, Allison.
Yeah, no,
Thanks.
no, thank you. Thank you for your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Hallie, oh, you've got your hand up. Yeah.
Oh yeah. The one of the something that your response to something that Allison was saying about you mentioned something about the whole you're too sensitive thing, and I kind of relate to that statement, and that got me thinking. Because it's like people have it's like I don't like it when people say that, and it's just hard to, and it's like I keep saying something, so I guess I was just wondering, um, if someone ever says that, like, what do you think is appropriate to say? Because I just don't think it's because there's not to me, I don't see anything wrong with being sensitive, and it's like if someone says that, it's like my feelings aren't being validated and stuff, and it's like they don't really matter, and
Mm-hmm.
you can't help if you care.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah.
And so, okay, I have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
If I guess this isn't so much a question. If this is a
Oh, okay.
person, like one specific person that you're thinking of as you say this, and there's
Oh,
somebody who really really matters to you in your life, and you want to have this relationship ongoing, then again, it's really hard when I don't have specifics, but
oh,
and only because there's it depends on what's going on for each person and when that comes up. But you're right to feel that it doesn't feel right. Your feelings are your feelings. All of our feelings are our own feelings. One thing I'm going to say those words, you're too sensitive, is insensitive. Let's put it that way, right? That's just
yeah.
an insensitive, that's an insensitive thing to say, to tell anybody they're too this or they're too that. It's not uncommon. And often I don't know if you've heard the term gaslighting, but often that's
Oh,
part of what happens in it is you're to this, you're to that. It's turning something around to being your fault. This really isn't an issue. It's only an issue because you're too sensitive, right? Like that's often, and I'm not
oh
saying
my
that's
goodness.
I'm not saying that's what's happening here. So I want to make sure that
Oh,
if
yeah,
I don't have real clear specifics as to who said what were the circumstances, and
true.
then don't take what I'm saying as being that's a fact in this case, but I'm throwing different things out there. So
True.
it's one thing is to look at ourselves and go, am I a little extra sensitive in these situations? Is there something inside me where I get triggered over certain things? Do I feel defensive? Do I feel insecure? Do I feel so? First of all, start taking a look at that, not because it justifies the other person's comment, but because I'm going to go back to the very first thing I talked about, which is the most important relationship you'll ever have is with yourself.
So true.
That's where your power comes from. That's where your groundedness comes from. That's where you get to a point eventually where when you hear things from other people and you observe behaviors coming at you from other people, you've got this strong, you're able to just look at them more objectively and go, wow, that's a really insensitive thing you just said to me. Because I feel just fine in the feelings that I have right now because what you said wasn't very nice and I feel hurt. That's one way to respond.
True.
As long as, again, and I'm saying this with, it's hurtful for anyone to say you're to this or you're to that.
Oh yeah, or you need to
Right?
toughen up,
Yeah,
or you got
yeah,
to have a thicker skin.
yeah, yeah. I mean, your first reactions internally are, don't tell me what I need to do. Don't tell
Yeah,
me I need to thicken my skin. And that's understandable that we would feel defensive. So I'd say look at it from two perspectives.
perspective.
Do you need to thicken your skin a little for the future? And do you need to say to someone, when you say
Yeah.
those words to me, I feel disrespected or I feel unacknowledged.
When you say blank to me,
I feel whatever it is I feel.
I think I'm gonna have to wait if it comes up again. Because I have said something before, but it just seems like it keeps coming up. And
And again, we're not here to change people.
oh, true, you can't change people.
They have to
Oh my,
want to listen and they have to want,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. So learning your language, knowing how to speak assertively, getting grounded, knowing your boundaries and getting solid in those helps.
Thanks, Adrienne.
You bet. Okay, where are we at?
I got a couple questions that came in the chat, so I'll give those to you next. So the first one says, I come from a Persian family where being assertive can sometimes be viewed as disrespectful, which makes conflict resolution with my family particularly challenging for me. How can I navigate this cultural perspective while still practicing assertiveness in a respectful and effective way?
I'm just reading it as well. It kind of goes back to, a lot of what I have been saying, which is we're not here to change others, right? We're not here to change others. And so would there be times that in that situation, by learning some skills in how to approach that situation in a way that's maybe more effective, where others will be more open and receptive to how you're feeling and what's important to you and what's important to you in that relationship, and what potentially, I guess when you're saying being assertive can be disrespectful, I don't know exactly what is constituting assertiveness in that case. Is it disagreeing? Is it expressing a different opinion? Is it like, I'm not quite sure what it is that you're wanting to be assertive about. So if you're here and want to speak to that, maybe it might help me.
Yeah, so that was my question. And what I meant was when I'm expressing a different opinion or a different viewpoint that is not necessarily equal to my parents, it's very hard to talk about it. Just because if I am, it kind of equals to me disrespecting them. So a lot of times it stops me from even sharing that with them because it's kind of like rules and I can't really, do anything.
Yeah. It's hard, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah. It's hard when you have your own different viewpoint and different thoughts and different ideas. And I'm going to share something with you because I don't relate to what you've said from a cultural perspective. I relate to what you've said from a perspective of having a mother who didn't want to hear anything that didn't align with her perspective and her viewpoint. And it's very debilitating. It's, speaking from my own experience, it's diminishing. It's difficult because there's two things that can happen. One is a person can start to become fairly overreact and overly sensitive at times when they're not being listened to, not just within that structure, but in other situations. And so we find that that's one of those things that can start to develop within us, where someone might say, wow, like you get really defensive sometimes. And you're going, don't tell me, going back to Hallie's thing, don't tell me I'm defensive. But maybe we are, right? I mean, I was for a while in my life. And when I started to swing that pendulum from not expressing myself much and be more reserved and unsure of myself because I wasn't validated as a young person growing up if I didn't agree with what my mother said, I doubted myself a lot. And so then as the pendulum started to swing when I got over, I got a little more overly needing to get my opinion out. And so, but that's not unusual. Our pendulum will swing. And then if you keep working at things, you get more into a balanced spot. I don't know that you're going to be able to change how your parents listen to you. I'm being totally honest. I think realizing sometimes what the situation is and realizing that it's a matter of starting to get into other environments where you are listened to, where people do want to hear what you have to say, where your differences and your diversity and your ability to question people and challenge people is allowed and is respected. Often we look at wanting to get what we feel we deserve, which we rightfully do, from the wrong people, from the people that we just might not ever get it from. And that's who we tend to at times think we need it from the most. And so, you know, I don't know. I don't have, trust me, I don't have that magic wand that says, if you say this and this and this, suddenly the clouds will part and you will be listened to forevermore. That's potentially more of one of those inside jobs as well as have you ever had a conversation, and maybe it's not time yet, in your relationship with your parents, where you can say, you know, I need to talk because this is how I feel. And I don't know if I'm right, but I feel like you don't value my thoughts and my opinions if they differ from yours. And I value yours and I respect yours. And I don't know if I'm right, but I feel that you don't respect mine. Like, I'm just throwing stuff out there, right? Like, I'm not saying that's what you say or that's what you do. I'm just throwing out ideas and thoughts and suggestions. Does that help at all?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I've tried that before, but it's something that I can definitely get better at. And thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Absolutely. Thank you. Someone I thought had their hand up. No?
Yes, it was me.
Oh,
Yeah,
hi.
yeah. Hi. How are you?
Good.
Yeah. Thank you for the content. I was kind of thinking about the thing that just Sadaf shared. I was thinking that maybe because this is the like a very long-term situation. Like for example, it's not a friend that we're gonna meet like once in a week or something. So it's a very, very long-term situation. Is it possible that in such situations, like learning some skills about setting boundaries would help?
It could. It could. You know, I don't know. If you're asking me, maybe the best person to ask is Sadaf. Is that how I pronounce your name? Maybe the best person to ask is Sadaf. I mean, is it important to learn boundary setting skills? Absolutely. It just is in life going forward. Would it work? I don't know. Like that's only Sadaf can answer that, really. She knows her parents and she knows her family and she knows, and to say, you know, if say, for example, setting boundaries is, you know, it's not okay for
I feel
you
like
to, yeah.
if you've done that, like since you were a kid and you were good at setting boundaries, especially with family, then it's more maybe accepted, but like to suddenly start having boundaries, especially like at my age, it's something that might not necessarily be accepted right away. But if I practice it over and over and stand by it, then I think like at some point they'll understand it, hopefully.
And it depends on, these are things I'm just going to throw out there. It depends on how much you eventually need it, or how much you're eventually able to just let go because you're getting that you have that relationship with others that's really fulfilling. Or it might reach a point where you go, you know, there's certain aspects of my relationship that aren't okay going forward. And so I do know that I need to set some boundaries, because if I don't, it's going to cause more issues because I'm going to start to feel resentful or angry or whatever. That's part of weighing all of that out as well. is when we set boundaries, it's knowing that this is the way it has to be for me in order to continue to engage in this relationship, right? That's one of the things that is a consideration in boundaries. Are they an option? Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. How are we doing there, Sohana?
I've got one more question in the chat for you.
Okay. We'll take one more.
Perfect. So it says, I'm not sure if you know much about cultural aspects from conflict resolution, but in your experience with helping others with conflict who are from a non-Western background, do you find conflict resolution varies across cultures, or is it similar to what we've been learning?
I don't know enough about it, to be honest, to answer your question. Where is that? Is that up
This
further?
one was directly messaged to me.
Oh, okay. So could you read it again, please?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not sure if you know much about cultural aspects of conflict resolution, but in your experience with helping others with conflict, who are from non-Western backgrounds, do you find conflict resolution varies across cultures, or is it similar to what we've been learning?
Oh, I'd say it varies. I'm going to just repeat this. I'm not an expert in conflict resolution cross-culturally. I do, as I said, in the one that particularly the course that I teach for Vancouver Community College, there's a huge, diverse group of cultures that are registered in those programs. And so because I teach interpersonal communication skills and because conflict resolution and assertiveness are components, the students have shared lots at times and shared how within their culture, certain things are acceptable, certain things are considered disrespectful, and they may be things that I'm teaching as skills that are constructive. And so it's awesome. Like I love it because there is such diversity and people are able to share and people start to understand how they're not the only one dealing with some of these intricacies and that they are intricate and they are challenging. But I am in no way an expert in cross-cultural conflict. You might, whoever asked that question, you might want to take a look at that Bill Urey book that's called Getting to Yes, because he is someone who has done a ton of peace negotiations internationally at really high levels, and definitely would have been immersed in the cultural components of that and the dynamics involved in that. Because, he gets involved in things where he's dealing with, countries and countries at war and countries at war within their own country. And so, a lot of things that he would be dealing with. It may be something, I don't know if it would answer that question more specifically for you. But yeah, just to answer the question, is there a difference? Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. How are we? Good? I'm just
That's
going.
all I've got for you.
Awesome. Great timing. It's 8:40, so we went a little bit past, but that's okay. I'm just going to pull my PowerPoint up again.
Nassim, did you have another question?
Sorry, what was that?
I had a little question, but I'm not sure that if you have time, because it's not necessary.
It depends on the question.
Oh, okay. May I ask it or not?
Yes, ask the question.
Yeah. For me, the matter is that like whenever I want to put up something and bring up the conflict and talk about it, I kind of feel that I need a technique to control the emotions that coming at the same time. Like
Within
feeling,
yourself?
yeah, when I
Mm.
want to put the words, I feel that sometimes it's kind of a little impulsive or emotional, and I don't know how to balance the emotional part and like try to be rational with them, not rising the emotions and impulses there, just trying to be rational and like in a like a very gentle tone and pace. You know what I mean?
I do. No, I'm just, again, all your questions have been such good questions, and I'm again going to say, without kind of going really into, give me examples, let's talk through a specific, let's this and that. My answers are somewhat general, but two things is that self-reflection. Like if you're caught off guard, something happens and you feel yourself, getting that emotional reaction, and you don't feel that you're going to, as a result of that, you don't feel that you're going to be as effective, then you have choices. I mean, you can just start asking questions. Help me understand more. So, okay, I hear what you've just said, but I'm not really sure exactly why you feel that way or why you've said that. Could you help me understand more? Like, start asking some questions sometimes is a really good way to allow yourself to start to de-escalate. You can just remove yourself too. I mean, I'm just throwing stuff out there because I don't know the specifics, but you can say, you know what, I'm just really, right now, I'm feeling really emotional, and I don't think this is going to be the best time for me to have this conversation, but it's important to me. I want to have this conversation. And so I'm just going to take a bit of a break, or I need a few minutes, or let's talk about this later. Like, those are things you can also do, right? Having some emotion and some passion is okay too, though, right? It depends on what we say in that situation. If we say things that we later regret because we reacted at a higher level than was constructive, there's those kinds of things. And start looking at, when are those situations that you feel that way? Is it just any time that some conflict starts to arise, you find yourself feeling that way? Or is it in certain situations when certain things are done or said? Are you being triggered? Do you have some triggers in there and you are really overly reacting emotionally? Triggers are big. Triggers come from memories and past experiences and feelings that we carry that are easily triggered, those kinds of things. So yeah, without knowing the exact context, those are just some of the things that I would throw out there. But again, being very passionate and animated and even angry is okay. It's okay to be angry. Like, conflict at times anger is involved. Strong emotions can be involved. We might say things that we wish we hadn't. We are human beings. Those things can happen. I'm not advocating and teaching these things that I teach, that you go and learn these skills and you forevermore are this calm, cool, collected person. No, trust me. I'm a passionate person. I'm not always calm, cool, and collected. But what I've learned is how to express that anger in a much more respectful, constructive way. I've learned how to, if I'm really hurt, to hang on to that initially. And when the time is right for me and it's right to have the conversation, I'll express that. I will share that. And I'll share it in good, assertive language, which describes what took place, and I take ownership for my own feeling. Like, this is all part of, what these courses and things teach, is how to do that, the language you can use, those kinds of things. So I don't know if that helped, but those are some things.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. So from this day forward, that's the name of my company, basically, because I believe everything's from this day forward. It's always from this day forward. Doesn't whatever's happened in the past, today's today. The power is now.
I love
And
I love that.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. The time is now and the power is you. It's what I have tattooed on my arm because the time is always now and the power is always you. It's about moving forward. So that's what I do. That's who I am. This is my contact information. If anybody wants to do an introductory call, there's my Calendly link. I can actually, so Hannah, could you copy and paste those in chat again? That would be lovely. And I just wanted to throw in here, I'm not big on titles or anything, but I am certified in conflict resolution, coaching, counseling, NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which is a very interesting approach to how we approach life and work with individuals. Emotional intelligence assessment certification and facilitator certification. Did you get those links, Sohana? And
Yeah, I've just posted those links in the chat for everyone.
Awesome. The next workshop of my own workshops that I'm starting is Monday, the 27th. It's 5 sessions. I'm skipping February 17th, which is a family day holiday. It's 2 hours. 2 hours a night for 5 weeks. It's regularly $249 for this course. I'm offering it to registrants of this presentation for $195. So if anyone's, and that's going to cover, it's going to be an introduction to conflict resolution, what contributes to it. We're going to talk about the constructive side of conflict, because when we really understand the power of conflict, I mean, that's the only way we change. It's the only way we grow. It's the only way we gain different perspectives. It's the only way we have the best potential to problem solve together. You got to have conflict. Conflict is simply disagreeing and having different perspectives. We go into self-reflection, I help the students gain a more personal insight to your own conflict style that you currently have, how it is working, how it isn't working. I go into skills that are associated with resolving conflict constructively. We look at triggers and self-regulation tools. So that's, if anyone's interested in that, shoot me an email, give me a phone call, send me a text, and we can talk about it.
Adrienne, thank
Yeah.
you so much for taking the time to do like an introduction on conflict resolution. I really appreciate it. I feel like I've learned a lot, and well, I always like
Awesome.
to learn, and I feel like we can always learn and grow. And
Never stops.
true.
Ever. Trust me. I'm learning and growing every day. And I still do stuff that I go, oh man, I can't believe I just got triggered over that. Or,
It's okay.
well, yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, it continues, right? Like, we are human beings. Do I deal with conflict and are my relationships 10 times better than they were 40 years ago? Yes, they are. Do I still make mistakes? All the time, sure. We are human, but I do know how to adjust to them and to correct them much more effectively and constructively and quickly. So, okay.
Oh, I meant to ask, is it possible to get a copy of your slideshow? I liked some of the information seemed really helpful and stuff.
You bet. I'll convert it to a PowerPoint and I'll send it off to Sohana.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your busy days to learn and to grow and to improve and to share. Thank you for all your questions. Questions just help us all learn more at a deeper level. And it was great to have you all here. It was really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
And before everyone leaves, I just want to again say thank you to Adrienne for being here and taking out the time and answering questions. It was amazing, and I'm sure everyone learned a little something. And then also just to let everyone know that the next Women Rising event is going to be on January 23rd, and that one's in person. And it's a seminar on building strong communities. So just like you registered for this one, you can go to the website, Entropy and the Women Rising program, and it's there. We've got tons more like seminars and workshops coming up. So if you're interested in any of that, you can come by. Again, thank you to Adrienne, and then hopefully we see everyone sometime soon.
And thank you to Low Entropy for hosting these events, organizing these events. They're really they're cool for people to be able to take in. Good night, everyone.
All right. Awesome. Everyone have a good night.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you.